All right, it's time for Yogi and the Beach Man. Hi, I'm Jim the Yogi.
And I'm Rick Beach, the Beach Man.
We're two Michigan transplants now living in Southwest Florida.
In fact, we're cousins born in 1964, just a month apart.
I like to meditate.
And I like to play bass in a band.
I'm into chanting Om.
And I'm into throwing down some classic rock.
But together, we're on a mission
to promote people that are helping other people.
We want to make the world a better place.
One conversation at a time.
So sit back,
turn up the volume,
and get ready to laugh.
Because we like to have fun
while we spread the love.
Interviewing lovely people. Yes, we have fun.
San Miguel de Allende in Mexico.
Oh, you're down in Mexico.
Yeah, about 4-hour drive from Mexico City.
South?
North of Mexico City.
Okay.
Okay. Very cool.
I spent some time as a kid in Guadalajara.
Okay. Yeah, we're about 5-hour drive from Guadalajara.
I guess it's pretty big. I don't know. I'm not up on my Mexican geography that well.
No.
But I know that you're pretty far south.
Yeah. Yeah, we're about from the border, several, quite a few hours. Yeah.
That's cool. What got you? Where are you from originally?
Well, I don't know. Can you hear it in my accent? Do I have
a
an
little
accent?
bit of New York, a little bit of New York there, ain't there?
You got it. You got it.
Yeah, I thought so.
Brooklyn. So I didn't know who Yogi and the Beach Man was. It was really confusing for me.
I'm Jim. I'm the Yogi.
Okay.
And I'm Rick Beach, hence the Beach Man.
Okay, Jim and Rick.
Yeah,
Yes.
we're cousins, a month apart, and we're both.
Okay.
Well, Jim just turned 61, and
I'm the old man.
I got a couple weeks before I'm there.
He's the youngster.
Yeah.
Well, I'm the old guy.
Oh, yeah, in this show you are.
And I think you might be the only guest that lives south of us except maybe Miami.
Well, where are you now?
In Port Charlotte, Florida, which is just south of Sarasota.
Okay. Yeah, because we lived a long time. Well, 6 years we lived in Fort Lauderdale, then Miami Beach.
Okay.
Yeah, but
So
that
you're no
was
stranger to Florida.
Yeah, not at all.
So you know where we're at then, Punta Gorda area.
Yeah, I looked it on the map actually.
Yeah, it's a great little town.
Welcome back to Yogi and the Beach Man. Today, we are with Michael Dorfman. We're both super excited to have him on our show. I think this is going to be a great conversation. Michael, welcome, and thank you for taking your time to be with us today.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I think it's going to be we're going to have a good conversation.
I think so too. Michael, you're an investigative author. You promote a plant-based diet. You've written a couple books, one about that and one on your latest book just in 2024, Information Wars, The Battle for Truth and Freedom. I mean, that's a great topic in itself. And I think it's so important that what you're talking about with this, from what I'm understanding, needs to get out to the general masses. People need to understand what's happening with propaganda and misinformation. But before we get there, you're 83 years old?
83 years old in January. Yeah, I was 83.
All right, excellent. And you're in good health, I take it?
Yeah, I'm in really good health. That's why I'm actually writing my second health book, which is on longevity, because I'm living longevity. 83, I think, is a good age to say that, okay, I'm getting older and I'm really thriving, enjoying myself. I'm an avid pickleball player. I don't know if you know much about that.
Oh, yeah. I was playing today. I play a
Me
few times a
too.
week.
Me too.
Excellent. I love that.
So I play against. So I play a lot of people that are, young people in their 40s and 50s, and I do pretty well. I actually won a bronze medal in one of the competitions, and it's really amazing how it's grown in Mexico. It's unbelievable. I mean, Guadalajara, it's probably in about 15 different cities now in Mexico, and they have competitions and.
Well, heck, pickleball's got its own couple of channels. I can scan through my sports networks on my TV menu, and I have 2 pickleball channels I can watch. Pro Pickleball, pretty much 24/7.
Okay.
5 years
Yeah, I
ago, it
watch it
wasn't
too. I
that.
get
It's
some
a-
good tips on that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fun to watch.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we were in Cabo maybe a year and a half ago, and right near where we're staying, there was actually a pickleball retreat. So you can just go and have the finest pickleball courts around, and I don't know if pros show up, but they got lessons and all that. So it's a literal just
Yeah.
pickleball retreat.
Did you know about well, it's on Netflix, the documentary on the blue zones, Live to 100 Secrets of the Blue Zones?
I heard about them recently on a podcast, and the guy was a specialist in insulin resistance, and he brought up the topic of cholesterol, and he was talking about how these they did blood samples on these people in these blue zones, and their quote unquote bad cholesterol was off the charts.
Wait, I'm ignorant of the blues. I don't know anything about this. So what? It's a
Oh, I could bring
series
you.
on
Well,
Netflix.
yeah, the Blue Zones was written. Dan Buettner wrote the book, The Blue Zones, and this was about 15 years ago. And the whole thing. He was working for National Geographic, and National Geographic sent him to find out the healthiest and longest living people on the planet, and that was his search. So he found out that, well, these were the 5 blue zones that he found out. One is Okinawa in Japan, Sardinia in Italy, Ikaria in Greece, Loma Linda in California, and Nicoya in Costa Rica. And the reason I brought it up was because he went back there last year and he did a series on it. It's on Netflix, a 4-part series, and he visited the blue zones again. And when he got to Loma Linda, I was very happy to see that they were the people in the blue zones, in the healthy people. They were playing pickleball. That was part of their
Their
yeah. I
exercise
said,
regime.
yeah, it's pickleball, right?
I love it.
Yeah, it's
It is a
great
fun sport. I'm totally
is.
addicted. Yeah.
But now you're seeing pickleball in big pharma commercials though.
Yeah, that's
When I-
Really?
yeah, but-
Oh my
Oh,
God.
So,
You're so
well, you
right.
don't have
Don't tell
pharma commercials
me.
in Mexico. So yeah, so I'm watching this and I'm like, I can't believe that. But they weren't pickleball players.
Yeah.
They were actors that had no idea. They're like, dink a dink, and
Oh, you're
I'm like,
kidding.
come
Yeah.
on. If you're gonna if you're gonna at least propagandize us with your blood money, you could at least do it right.
But they were selling pharmaceuticals
Oh,
with,
yeah.
with the pickleball.
Well, the
It-
pharmaceuticals enhances your pickleball and makes you a happier person.
Yeah, you know how when they're looking at things to help your bladder cancer, they're showing you walking down the beach and riding horses. They get the
Yeah.
fluffy stuff on the visual and then tell you 45 seconds of side effects.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, Mexico, you're not allowed to, there's no you can't advertise pharmaceuticals, the drug
They're
company.
working on that here.
only
Yeah.
2 in the world, us in New Zealand.
Yeah, exactly. But they're working on it. Hopefully Kennedy is able to do that,
Well, I think it was a First Amendment issue. That was how they got that exemption, but they somehow got around that with big tobacco. So they should be able to use the same precedent to go against pharma, I would think.
Yeah, well, the same tactics they're using, but pharma is so powerful. Oh my God.
Yes.
It's crazy. I heard
Yeah.
all the big networks I heard get like 70, some stupid amount, like 73% of their ad money is pharma. And that's from Fox News to MSNBC and everybody in between.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so let's see what happens with that. But it's a tough fight, They're so powerful. So many of the politicians they leave their office and they start working for pharma and
Hmm.
it's like
It's a revolving door from the FDA, and
yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
At least
Ridiculous.
RFK's made his living suing them, not working for him. So
Right.
I have a lot of faith in RFK, and I just really hope that the backbone is there, because it's certainly not in the Justice Department, which is needed to go after pharma too. And I don't see that happening, but that's a little deeper subject, I guess.
But he got into that spot he wanted, and that was a lot of people didn't think he was ever going to be selected, and he got in, so that's a good sign.
Yeah.
It is. But those groups are so powerful. You know, I have a lot of hope. Can't say I have a lot of faith, but really, I mean, we have to change the way food is grown in this country to really make a difference. I mean, we could say, oh, we're going to take some poisons out of the food, a little bit here, a little bit there, but to really make a difference, we have to change, you know, this monoculture idea of growing crops and get back into real permaculture, or whatever they call it, making
Mhm.
growing multiple plants and not just single corn and making high fructose corn.
Regeneration of the earth, the soil. You know.
Yes. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's so important. Our soil's sick, basically, you know, and it's not on any path to recovery because we're not doing anything to make it better.
I heard, who was it? Oh, it was Sadhguru's our
Mhm.
interview. He said that we got like 40 years till topsoil is over in at least in our agricultural farmlands here or
Yep.
around the world, I think.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I'm not a fan of I'd really rather eat chemical free. But did it say in your bio that you're on a plant-based diet?
Yeah, I've been on a plant-based diet for it's almost 17 years now. Both my wife and myself, and yeah, it's I started. Yeah, it was 2008 actually when I got into a plant-based diet.
What
And
brought you into the plant-based diet? Why'd you make the change?
well, what happened was I became a vegetarian in 1976. And because at that time I became interested in Eastern philosophy and religion, and
Very
there, on
cool.
that side of the world, there were a lot of people who were vegetarians. So I
Mhm.
made the change. Both of us, my wife and myself, we made the change into in vegetarianism. So we kept on eating dairy, and eggs, and
Mhm.
I was feeling pretty good, except that I would get sick a couple of times a year. I was well, it wasn't terrible sickness, but I was sore throat and fever and congestion, headaches, and just overall, I don't know if it was the flu, but it was a couple of times a year. And my brother, who he lives in New York, he suggested or he recommended me trying to get off of dairy,
Mhm.
cheese but I couldn't do it. It was like I was really addicted to the pizza and the cheese and yogurt. So I didn't do it, and then finally it was like as the years passed, and he said, "Why don't you read the?" Told me about the China study, which was the T. Colin Campbell, which I read, and that what I decided I was going to make the change, and that
Well,
was almost yeah.
what did you find in that study? What made you switch?
Well, T. Colin Campbell is he was the China study was done. Xiao Enlai, I think Xiao Enlai was the premier or the president of China, and he died of cancer. And before he died, he wanted to do this study. It was a 20-year study to find out all about cancer in China. So Campbell, who was working on that, he was from Cornell University. Actually, I got my certification from him in plant-based nutrition. He went over there and they did a 20-year study, and they studied over 160 rural areas of China, and to find out where is what types of cancer, the differences. And that was the main idea of the study. And he found out that the among these rural populations, that they were very heavily plant-based. That was one of the things, beside having a lifestyle that was active, and that cancers were more prevalent in the big cities, where people ate more meat than they did in the rural areas. So that was the thing. But just the way he's not an MD. He was a biologist, but he is so well informed. I mean, his whole history is just replete with information. He's just a brilliant scientist. But anyway, he came up with that, and with this study, and also about what it is in dairy that wasn't healthy, but just the whole overall way his information that I I took to heart. I
Mhm.
decided to give it a shot, and I just gave up. And it ended up that I didn't have the problem anymore, and that was that was what was so positive for me when I adapted a plant-based diet, and that sort of started me on the road.
What was like your health at the time? You look like you're pretty fit right now.
Yeah, I am. I go to the
I mean, were
gym
you
three
like that at
times
the
a
time?
week. Yeah.
Were you like that at the time, or did you have the beer
Uh,
gut going, or?
well, at the time, because what happened is that I was living in Mexico, and we went to the states. We went back to the states, and when I was in Mexico, I was eating meat again before I did the change to vegetarianism. You're talking about that when I made the change to vegetarianism?
Yeah, when you went up,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I was heavy. Actually, I when I was younger, I played football. I was a football player, but that was a long time ago. But I was on the heavy side, 180 pounds. Now I'm down. I'm very very thin. I weigh out like 135 is my average, but I like it. I feel very good about it.
How tall are you?
For about 5'9". Yeah,
Okay.
Okay.
That's a significant change.
it's significant change. It really.
Yeah. I asked
And
about the dairy in the studies because I know when they were figuring out what people should eat here and developing my plate, from my understanding, the scientists or nutritionists at that time said, "Yeah, dairy doesn't belong on my plate. We're not going to put it on there." But then the dairy industry was in an uproar. They're like, "Oh no, no, you can't. Dairy's got to be on my plate."
What's my plate?
That's what they came up with a portions of how much food we should eat. Like,
it's a
well, okay,
guide.
before
Guy.
my plate was the food pyramid.
Oh, okay.
So it
Yeah.
was originally the food pyramid, which evolved into my plate. Now they actually moved dairy to the side of the plate. So
And when I was in school, it was the basic seven.
yeah.
But it was always, the basic seven was developed by the agriculture industry.
Mhm.
Oh yeah, that was
Yeah.
all a big
So they
scam
have
already
something
too.
so much to say, just like the pharmaceutical company. So, you know, it's so much of the information is controlled,
Mhm.
the narrative of what we should be eating. And, with me, it's, I think there's so much, for example, in the dairy industry, the, there's so much money in it, and the investors and the stockholders, they all have a share in it, so they push what they want to push, and that's why you get different types of diets to follow. And I mean, you look at there's over 100 diets. I mean, go into Wikipedia, there are so many diets that people don't even know what to eat anymore.
Mhm.
But most of the ones are the two major types of diets are the high fat, low carb, and then you have low fat, high carb. So that's always been out through the history, all the way going back to Atkins and the South Beach diet, and the zone diet, and then the paleo diet, and now the keto diet is the most popular diet. So yeah, it's just that people don't know what to do. And I forgot who said this. It's not really that important whether people believe your information. I think it was one of the I don't know, directors of the dairy industry. The most important thing is that people are confused. So as
That
long as
makes sense.
people are confused, they won't make changes.
Yeah.
So that's
Because
what
they
you
don't know
find.
what
Well,
direction to go in.
all these diets, and the keto diet and the carnivore diet. I mean, the only one and I really don't follow any diet other than I don't eat a lot of sugar, no soda, and no processed foods. If you stay away from that, or if you're a 3 Diet Coke a day and a half a bowl of ice cream at night, you're going to be heavy and you're going to be pre-diabetic and you're going to be not
That's
healthy.
right.
And even if you can the diet, but the Diet Coke is better than the Coke. It probably isn't. You're ingesting some kind of
Brain cancer causing
Right.
aspartame.
yeah, chemical. I'd rather have real sugar and gain a couple of pounds. But if you can lay off the sugar and lay off the bread, and the pizza and stuff like that, you'll lose weight immediately. And then after a while, I found, I was like, I'm like 172 right now. I'm 5'9", and I'd say 4 years ago, I was like 208, 210 when I
Wow.
decided to just make a change. I had big fat beer gut. I look at myself playing golf. I just looked at myself the other day on a video playing golf from 4 years ago. I'm like, holy mackerel, that doesn't even look like me. I'm just too fat. But and then that's what I just stopped the sugar, stopped the sodas, and then laid off the bread. But now it's not even. Now I don't even like that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's not good.
It's just
Tastes
all
or good
habit
for you.
changing.
Yeah. But people nowadays, they just go for the Ozempic, which is really crazy.
What is that?
Ozempic, it's a drug that you take to lose weight.
It's one of those GLP-1 inhibitors or something like that. It works in your lower intestine, or
It's huge now. Yeah, everybody's doing Ozempic to lose weight.
it's
Well,
made by
that's what takes us into the whole thing with, or continuation of the whole big pharma thing, that we're addicted on drugs.
Mm-hmm.
And that for me, I was one of my favorite, I guess, what I wrote about. This is a paragraph, is that I wrote about what is our greatest gift. And the greatest gift is the gift of life, because without the gift of life, there's nothing, for us. And then I would say, well, yeah, but there's something else. There was another great gift, and that is the gift of our body, because of the body is where the gift of life resides,
Mm-hmm.
and I always try to remember that that the body is incredible. It has such self-healing powers if we trust it and we connect with it. And this is all, it's dying. That whole way of seeing health, it's like we become so addicted to drugs, in all kinds of drugs, whether it's pain relievers or just anything. Well, you see it advertised on the TV. And that's what we do. It's just, a pill for an ill. It's the
Mm-hmm.
quickest way. Just do that. And we just lost touch with our bodies, so we don't rely on our body's own immune system, which is incredible.
Right.
It's unbelievable. It's a miracle, the body. And yet everything that the doctors tell us to do, the medical profession, is just depend on us. We'll take care of you. And it ends up that all they do is they manage your disease, they manage the symptoms, and they don't know about, preventing. What do they tell you about preventing disease, or even reversing disease by
They don't have
just
time for that in school.
yeah. And
Honestly, I went through the nursing program. We don't talk anything on prevention. Doctors don't get any education on prevention.
yeah,
You got to seek that out yourself.
yeah. And that's when that happens, it's really great, because then you can say, yeah, I have to start taking responsibility for my own health, instead of relying on, our dependency on drugs.
Well, we talked about this with our guest just the other day a little bit, Antonio, about how the distrust for especially not only the American medical system, but the World Health Organization and all these scam organizations who just want to control us with their shots. And then
Misinformation.
but the issue really was, to me, was that there was zero informed consent. There was no, it really truly was just the COVID vaccine was just a genetic what do they call that, your gene therapy.
Gene therapy, yeah.
It really was a gene therapy shot, and they wonder why all cause mortalities go, over 40 is, skyrocketing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's interesting, because that's when I started getting into writing. But I don't know if you heard of the doctor, Michael Greger. He's
No.
also a plant-based doctor, but
Yeah.
it was in November of 2021. That was a couple of months before the vaccines were released, and so he was having monthly Facebook events, and you could actually ask him questions. It was live. So I was there, and I had this thing in the back of my mind I was going to ask him, and I asked the question, how do we know? Because he started talking about the vaccines. So I said, how do we know the vaccines are safe? That was my question in November of 2021. And immediately I got a pop-up from Facebook saying, you are the only one who could see this question. You have violated the community standards, believe it or not. And it was like, what? I never heard about this possibility, you know, that they could do this. This was my first, my first lesson of what censoring was going to be about. And then what happened after that is I started writing about it on my Facebook page, and then I was blocked from promoting it. And in fact, my wife and I, we created a what do you call a Facebook page? It was called The Vegan Wave in Spanish, and because it was in Spanish, and she's an incredible cook in plant-based cooking, so we were creating. She was put her recipes up there, and then we started writing about alternatives to regular milk. And there was almond milk and soy milk or whatever. And because it's less fat, it may be good for obesity and this thing. And they did the same thing. The Facebook, you couldn't even talk about anything else. It wasn't just vaccines. It was talking about alternative foods. I don't know if it's, but ever since then, I've created like 2 or 3 different Facebook pages, and they know me, and they don't let me promote my page. And
That's crazy.
It's all part of the, well,
I tried to friend you on Facebook today, and it wouldn't let me. I don't know if that has anything to do with it.
well,
yeah, probably.
you should go over to X. X will let you post whatever you want.
Well, I do. What I do is I post on Substack, I
Yeah.
post on X, I post on LinkedIn, and what is the other one? I forget. Medium. I post on Medium. So and also I forgot the other one. But that's what I do, because I do weekly articles and podcasts, which I send out to the people who subscribe.
Yeah,
So,
I call that the censorship industrial complex, which
yeah, exactly. That's what
Yeah.
it is.
it really truly is, and that all goes back to big pharma money and
Yeah.
their ownership of the media companies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So your book, Information Wars, The Battle for Truth and Freedom, what sparked you to write this? And I'm curious as to where you got your information to write this book.
Well, I think it all goes back to, that's why I like to be called an
Investigative author.
investigative author, is because I investigate, I would say 2 or 3 hours a day. So whatever is the situation, what's happening in the world, whether it's, the wars that are going on, or whether it's climate change, or with health, I'm always trying to get information, and I know, and it keeps changing. So new information's coming out. So what happened is that I started writing, and I did some podcasts when the pandemic came out, and then I just found out all about what you guys know about, is the whole thing with the vaccine. And then it started with I started going back, and I started checking out my history, and I went all the way back to what was happening with the cigarettes, with big tobacco, it became big pharma. So big tobacco was the same thing, and this was like in the 40s when everybody smoked. I smoked when I was 12 years old, and all my friends did in the 50s. And what happened was because we used to go to the movies, and everybody smoked. And this was promoted by the tobacco companies. It was like a big movement to make everybody smoke, and that's what happened. So everybody smoked in the movies, and then the Surgeon General, in the end of, I think it was the 60s, he came out with this connection between cigarette smoking and cancer. And then I found out that there were thousands of studies that were done during that 20-year period that was linking cigarettes to cancer. but the power of the big tobacco, that didn't allow all that information out. So that was the beginning of it, and then it went to health, and then it went to the wars that we weren't being told the truth about, because I was a protester during the war in Vietnam, and then the Iraq war, weapons of mass destruction. And it was like I was putting these things together, and I got into the climate change thing, and
What's your deal on the climate change thing?
well, the climate change thing, to me, is that there is climate change. Climate change has been going on for billions of years, and the climate's been changing. And right now we are in a 300-year warming period, that's the way it is. And before that, there was a mini ice age in the 1600s. That was during the Dark Ages, when there wasn't much food, and usually the warming periods are signs of where cultures and they thrive because of the planted growth. There's more food, and it's a good time for human beings, because and the CO2 is what the plant food. So the plant breathes the CO2, and then it grows, and then it gives off the oxygen, which humans feed off. We're alive because of that. So but the problem became when they made the climate change into a climate crisis. And then, all the movements behind the climate crisis for the 15-minute cities, and it's just a different way to control people. And they started freaking out because of this. Oh, it's climate change. And if the change in, the CO2 grows this amount. There's been plenty of times when CO2 is much worse than it is now. And not only that, CO2 sometimes correlates with the high temperatures throughout the thousands and millions of years, and sometimes it doesn't correlate with high temperatures. So all this information is, I have this book that I follow different books and different podcasts on that, and it just really say, I don't know where Trump is getting, because he's also against the the climate change things.
I think he's against the climate change agenda.
Yeah, the agenda. That's what I mean. But in Mexico and many parts of the world, this whole climate change agenda, isn't really great for most of the world, because they want you to get off of the fossil fuels. Where if these countries, especially in Africa, even in Mexico needs, we use fossil fuels. Even though the president of Mexico, Claudia Sheinbaum, she went to Stanford University, and she was a climate expert, and she's using both. So she's working, getting the hybrids in there, but we're not touching we need the fossil fuels, and that's what's happening in Africa now. They need to use fossil fuels. If they don't, well, the civilizations are going to collapse.
Their economy,
they can't
goes
afford
away.
it. So we got to really find out. And maybe you don't agree. Some people agree, don't agree, but we have to really investigate.
I agree with you that we are definitely in some kind of climate change cycle that we have nothing to do with. Now, I'm all for clean air and clean water, but I don't know if the trade-off to save a couple of parts per million on CO2 by the United States, when we're only like 6% of the output of CO2, is that a good trade-off for strip mining all these rare earth minerals to put in Tesla batteries? I mean, I'm not sure what causes more damage.
I think burning the Teslas, which people are into now, is probably causing a lot of damage.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Well, that's pretty recent. Yeah, have you been aware of that? There's been a lot of lefties that are not only threatening but firebombing and planting bombs.
They loved it a year ago. Now they hate the Tesla.
Yeah,
crazy.
Yeah, well, everybody is protesting everything. So, but what you mentioned, is that I'm not against. I agree. We're polluting the streams. We're polluting the oceans. But it's not we're not the ones that are causing climate change is happening way
Whether we like it or not.
whether like the earth is is adapts to a different set of laws than human beings adapt to. The earth is part of a universe, and it's has nothing to do with the climate change. Is, if you look, it's always up and down, always up and down, always throughout billions of years, and we're just in one stage of it. But get over it and get used to it. It's hot. It's getting hot. And not all over, some places are getting very cold, but in general, I mean, here where I am in San Miguel, when I was living in Cancun for 30 years, and the reason we left is because kept getting hotter. And here in San Miguel, the same thing. We used to, the hottest month used to be May, and now it's getting very hot. We have temperatures higher in March, but I have no problem with it. It's like, it's just I think people have to adapt and not focus on this thing with the climate crisis, because and it's not our fault, human beings.
It's not a crisis.
Yeah. So from what I'm understanding, your spiel in your book are kind of about how they've been change that we need to challenge the mainstream narrative. Is that correct?
Yeah, definitely.
So how does that happen? How do we go about educating people enough to even open their eyes to that? I mean, obviously a lesser number now are going to CNN or MSNBC or some of these news outlets, Fox News, different sources for their news, but still a lot of people are still watching it and following it in one way or another.
Before you answer,
Yeah,
I
go
think
ahead.
that you need to change it from, and what I would use is not mainstream narrative, but corporate narrative, because mainstream media is not mainstream anymore,
No.
but it is corporate.
Mm-hmm.
So they might be interchangeable, but hopefully, because everyone sees it coming, that the corporate media is losing. They're losing the war and the battles now. Of what people are going to believe, because once you've been lied to so many times by these corporate media outlets,
I still think there's a lot of people that don't even realize they were lied to yet. Even though I think Time just did a big story where they kind of retracted their part of the COVID stuff and said, "Oh, we were given misinformation or whatever.
but they
It wasn't our
didn't do
fault."
5 minutes of reporting. I mean, they could have found out with literally a Google search that ivermectin is the safest,
Yeah.
Drug almost ever created, and it would have been a great therapeutic, but you couldn't even discuss it.
No, you couldn't say
So
that.
Yeah, well, you look at in Mexico, before she became president, Claudia, she was the mayor of Mexico City. And during COVID, well, first of all, the president, AMLO, it was never mandated ever, vaccines, the vaccine. It was never
Excellent.
mandated. It was always, people gave different information, and it was left up to the states more than anything.
Mhm.
So it was never mandated. And Claudia, when she was mayor of Mexico City, she because of the people going to the hospitals, she created packages, hundreds of thousands of packages to be distributed for free on the streets, which included ivermectin and a couple of other things if you got sick, whether it's ibuprofen, I don't remember what it was, paracetamol. But here was accepted. You could buy. I had to send. My son lives in California, and I had to send. Somebody had to take it in the shoe or something like that. The ivermectin, because you weren't allowed to use it in the U.S.
Yeah.
My doctor refuses to prescribe me ivermectin, and I won't take any of the drugs she wants to give me. Zero. But so she gets but her and I get in battles.
Still?
Oh yeah. They're part of one of these local million doctor conglomerates, where they have 40 different offices around
Why do you
Florida.
even go see them? Why do you even go?
I just did to get my blood work done, and if I have an emergency and need a prescription for my sinus headache
Okay.
that I've just got over.
Yeah. So anyway, we had the ivermectin here, and everybody uses it still. I mean, just anytime you feel like so you're coming down with something, take your ivermectin. It's pretty popular here. But
You don't even
but when
grow
you
horse hooves.
what?
And
Yeah,
you don't even
right.
grow horse hooves.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah. But what you're saying about, and uh, to me, the big thing right now, I don't know how you feel about it. I don't know how much you want to get into it, is the whole thing, what's happening with the wars,
Mhm.
just how dangerous the world is today.
Yeah.
It's,
Which wars we talking about?
There's two that
yeah,
I
it's
could
a
think
good
of.
one. Well,
Israel and Ukraine.
Israel, Ukraine, and now with the bombing of Yemen, to me, it's like I think that because I have friends living in the States, and I know they're not getting the whole story,
Mhm.
and if and it's not only the corporations. I mean, the way I see it, it's also the government wants to make sure that you don't you go against the policies of the government.
Those
And
are the same things that, in this case, the corporation, the news media, and the government are intertwined with the deep state, the
Mhm.
CIA, the
Exactly.
FBI, Justice Department, and that they are the corporate narrative.
Okay, so it's
Because
one
I don't
big.
think there's any way that any of those media outlets say anything as far as the wars goes without the CIA talking points.
Yeah, I agree. So you're looking at it as a whole thing, which is true. But I think that that's what the problem is that you know when we protested in against the war in Vietnam, it was like there was no censoring because it wasn't. You didn't have the internet. You didn't have what you have today.
Well, they
And
should.
you can go out.
Walter Cronkite would show body bags on the 6 o'clock news. It got you riled up.
It sure did.
I remember my grandma crying watching the news at night. My grandma Beach.
Huh.
She wept when she'd see these body bags coming off the planes from Vietnam with these 19-year-old kids. And but then after that, they made it a policy that they would not show this stuff. They're not going to show body bags of our American soldiers coming off the planes. And so now it's kind of like out of sight, out of mind.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And there was no protests on George, well, small ones, but there was no national protest or organized for the weapons of mass destruction bullshit
It wasn't exactly.
in Iran,
And they never talk about the number
Iraq
of
rather.
injured veterans that have come back, which their lives are
I
destroyed.
don't care.
Yeah.
It's all the big we should.
Yeah.
Nobody paid attention to Eisenhower because that's who did run the show, but that has changed. That pendulum has swung from the big defense industry, which always had huge clout, to now to being number 2 behind pharma.
Yeah. So the information is controlled, and that's why the whole thing of the protest, in on the what do you call it, in the universities, the
Mhm.
protests against the war against well, the Gaza and the whole thing, but you weren't allowed to protest. It started happening. It was Kent University, for example, during the Vietnam War, but now it's you can't say anything. You got to you just I
Well,
don't
you
know if you
can't
ever.
say anything against Israel.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. Do you ever hear of Jeffrey Sachs, the professor
I
at
think I've
Columbia?
heard of them.
He's a professor at Columbia, and he was just he was interviewed today, and he was just saying that the students are scared. They're leaving school. They're hiding because they're afraid that they're going to be busted. They're going to find out that and pick them up and go to jail or whatever it is. He
Find
said
out what?
scared of saying anything against Israel. They were the ones who were on the protest during their Columbia
Right.
University.
But are we talking American citizens here?
I don't know if there were probably some were not American citizens, and others were,
Because there has been some talk,
yeah,
like if you're here on a student visa
Mhm.
and
yeah,
you're from out of the country, especially in an Arab country, and you are promoting anti-Israeli sentiment on college
uh-huh,
campuses, they're now using that as a reason to deport you.
Yeah.
Now the laws do state, and there is some fairly fair language that says if you do this, we can kick you out. So,
Mm.
but First Amendment's the First Amendment, and I don't know if I agree with that totally, but if it not American citizens, if your grandson or my grandson's in college right now, and he would not be one that if you're an American citizen, you're not getting picked up for speech violations against Israel.
Maybe.
Unless you've heard things to the contrary.
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't heard about any college kids being disappeared by the FBI or ICE. I mean, you can't deport them if they're Americans.
Yeah. Well, I don't know the actual, I don't know if they were kicked out of school or they were given warnings, but there is the definitely movement that you can't say in general that you can't say anything against Israel. What
Oh,
Israel,
no doubt about that.
yeah. So, but
But
that's not fair. That's free to,
well, there's only
stopping.
one congressman that doesn't take any Israeli money from APAC, which is the largest lobbying. I mean, they literally take hundreds of millions of our tax dollars. They launder it through foreign aid. So we send Israel $3 or $4 billion a year. I don't know if that's the number, but it's a lot of money. They then kick back to our politicians a few hundred million
Yeah.
and buy each and every one of them for that kind of, so they would be involved and approve that kind of censorship. And the only guy in Congress that does not take APAC money is Thomas Massey, and he needs to be supported. And he's the only voice of reason against Israel, or a much more center view than the rest of Congress, because he doesn't take their money. And they're super powerful lobby. They
Oh,
own our Congress. Our
that's it.
foreign policy is written by the Israelis.
That's
think we're
the
on the same
core
page, aren't
yeah,
we?
it is. That's it. Yeah, I think so. And that's where we are in this world right now. And it's scary, because of that power.
Mhm.
And, you know, uh, I just, and I think that, it's going to somehow be solved in one way or another. But I don't know because if it's going to be, what the final results are going to be, whether or not, it's going to be expansion of the war. Because now we had the war, what happened in Syria. Now it's with Yemen. The next step is going to be with Iran, because that's what they're threatening now. And
Well,
what
I
is,
sure hope not. That would be
yeah,
that it would be a total disaster to
it would be a
start
total
going on this
disaster. Like you,
Iran plan.
Well, a lot of people feel that countries that aren't participating in the World Bank are in the target, in the strike
Well,
zone.
in the last election, nobody voted for any new wars. That was part of Trump's thing. Hopefully, now he is making this deal over in Yemen, which
you mean
frankly,
Ukraine?
well, no, in Yemen, the bombing
Oh,
of the Yemen sites, and then Ukraine's a different story. But I don't know enough about what's going on in Yemen to really comment intelligently on it. But I can Ukraine, and that should have never started to begin with. And we certainly instigated that by with the threatening to bring Ukraine into NATO. So it shouldn't have been a surprise, nor was it that Putin did invade Ukraine. He said, if they join NATO, we will invade. And they
yeah.
threatened to, and he did. So Trump says he's going to get us out of it. It's been 2 months,
He
and
said the first aid get us out.
that he did. He did, but
24
yeah, but
hours,
you
right?
know what?
Yeah.
At least they're
Yeah.
at
He
least
said he
they're
was joking, though.
well, one thing's for sure. If you're not even talking to these people, there will not be any peace.
Yeah.
So I think it's major progress that
I
he's
do
talking to
too.
Putin, talking to Zelensky.
Absolutely.
But what I sure as hell don't buy is that if you let Putin have Ukraine, he's going to be in Warsaw next week. He couldn't really even get to Kiev, and he still isn't there in 2.5 years. So,
Mhm.
I don't believe he's just going to keep marching through Europe when his economy is less than
No,
California.
that was a creation, to,
It's propaganda,
yeah,
corporate
propaganda.
media.
Yeah. But now we're in the situation is like, because, you know, because it's, Russia has this deal, this treaty with Iran, and it's part of the what do you call it, the BRICS, the multipolar world.
Yeah.
So this got to stop, and I really hope that Trump carries through with his, with what he said, that he's going to be the peace president. And I just hope so, because if he doesn't do it, who is going to do it?
Right.
So let's see. And I really hope, because I believe that Putin wants to settle. He wants to settle this once and for all. And I think that if Trump, because he hasn't spoken to him in person, even though he's spoken to him on the phone, he said, I think that if Trump can get together, I think that, we can also, the U.S. can also work with China. There doesn't have to be you don't want a war with China.
No.
You want to work something out. And if this can happen, where they just look for, ways through diplomacy, instead of fighting in wars, which never end, it's never ending wars. It's going to be the only hope that we have, is that, diplomacy is established, and intelligence enters into the picture, and people, start working with each
Well,
other.
the last administration refused to
Totally.
open up any dialogue, and
Mhm.
nothing was going to happen in that situation. So, I'm encouraged that hopefully will go away. I don't think making, the Gaza Strip the next,
Trump.
Trump
boardwalk.
Trumpville, whatever it was, that was kind of stupid. So he's still full of his stupid things he says and does.
Yeah.
He's
That's
still
never
got
going to
that.
end. That's not going to end.
No, that's
No.
not going to end. And I signed up for that when I voted for him. And but I think it's just interesting times we live in, and but I do truly believe that it would have been the end of the United States had he not won. So we'd be much
do too.
worse off.
Oh, it would have been. Didn't see any stop towards Third World War and maybe thermonuclear war, because the Democrats wouldn't have changed anything. It would have been a
Agreed.
continuation together with Europe.
And they would have printed our money into just ultimate inflation even worse than they did.
Yeah.
So
No, I agree.
and we're getting rid of the woke mind virus too. So that's another good
Right.
thing.
So a question for you, average person, hearing our conversation today, and they're like, man, I would like to get off of the propaganda wheel here. And, where do they go to find truth? What do you recommend for that?
Well, I watch certain podcasts, which it's very hard to be able to find out who's telling you the truth, who's
Right.
not telling you the truth. It's a crazy world out there on the internet, and just with all these different podcasts. But I found a couple that I could recommend.
Sure.
One is called the Duran.
I just wrote it down to tell you about it.
The Duran. Another one is Judge Napolitano.
That was another one of mine I was going to say.
Yeah, he has. The thing I really liked about both of them is they have different guests on all the time.
And they have totally different perspectives, because Napolitano always has domestic guys, CIA guys, our generals for our military viewpoint. The Duran, on the other hand, gets the bigger worldwide view and zero American bullshit.
Yeah. So I listen to them, both of them, and then there's individuals such as Mearsheimer, the Professor Mearsheimer, and who's that? I'm trying to think of.
You said Mearsheimer? How do you spell
Yes,
that?
his last name, Mearsheimer.
Okay.
I forget his first name. Mearsheimer, and I don't know. I listen sometimes to Scott Ritter, and Scott Ritter was
Antiwar.com on my list.
Yeah, Scott Ritter. And
I'm thinking of a different Scott. No, I know Scott Ritter, but
okay. Yeah, he was the guy who was he was the head of the UN. There was the Iraq War. He was the head of the UN group that was checking out the weapons of mass destruction.
Mm.
And he was. I see. There's an interview with him by Biden interviews him, and Biden was the head of the War Department. I don't know at that time, and it was right before the Iraq War, and he said thing, and Scott Ritter said, "We're not finished yet. We've got to continue checking out if there is weapons of mass destruction." And Biden was like, he was so evil on that. He was just saying that decision is above your pay grade, and that I appreciate what you're saying, but you're not involved in this decision. And that's what. And then they went on, and they just, they lied to the American people. They wanted to make sure that the American people were behind, the invasion, of Iraq.
Another great podcast is Part of the Problem with Dave Smith. Just really good from a libertarian political viewpoint.
Okay.
And very intelligent thinker. I like listening to his debates against, lefties, I call them. And just really and he's pretty high up in the Libertarian Party.
Okay.
Now he's the one that gave a whole different spin on the war in Palestine and what's happening over there, that it was created.
Oh, for sure. It was created by the Israeli
By
government.
the Israeli government.
October 8th, they stood down for 45 minutes while their people just got mowed down at that concert.
Yeah.
So, and he's a Jewish guy out of New York.
Yeah. Well, I'm a Jewish guy. I'm a Jewish guy too.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying he's against the Israeli Mossad Netanyahu stance in the Gaza war, and and he can get away with saying things because he's also Jewish, which you know how that goes.
Yeah, but
that's definitely a double standard.
Yeah, but what he said about how that got all started, how Netanyahu got it all going, I mean, that's kind of mind blowing. It's the only person I've ever heard talk about it.
Yeah, you can dig deep down that rabbit hole.
Yeah.
It was the John Mearsheimer. That's the one,
Okay.
Professor John Mearsheimer. And
All right.
also, who's really great is Jeffrey Sachs, Professor Jeffrey Sachs from Columbia University. He's really sharp. I mean, he's an economist, travels around the world. I love guys who travel around the world. And right now, Jeffrey Sachs is in China. And what's his name? Pepe Escobar. He speaks English. He's from Brazil, but he gets interviewed on what do you call it? On the judge Napolitano a lot. But right now he's in Sana'a, Yemen. He's there. In other words, he travels around. Then he goes to Russia. He spends a few months there. So when you get the reports from these people, and you find out, who went over to Russia recently? They interviewed Lavrov. Was Judge Napolitano and not Ray McGovern, the other guy. These are all former CIA worked for the CIA. So they went over to Russia, and they interviewed Lavrov.
He's the writer, right?
Lavrov?
Yeah, right.
No, Lavrov's the head of his foreign minister. He's like Putin's top man.
Right.
He speaks
like
English very
Secretary
well.
of State. Yep. I know. Okay.
Yeah. So he was there. So they asked him the question. Well, they asked when they returned to the States, they asked the judge and the other guy, what was the thing you noticed that was really surprising about Moscow? And he said, there were no police on the streets. And then the other thing, and if you ever want, I also tell people, just go, there are videos. You can go and look at videos of other countries. You can look at videos from China and then Russia, Moscow, or St. Petersburg, or even Iran. And you could see, and to me, it's like, the bottom line for me is people are people. That if you really, everybody's the same. Everybody wants, it's
Freedom.
the government, basically. We all want,
our basic needs and
freedom.
freedom.
We don't want to be threatened. We want to have peaceful lives. We want to be able to afford, living, spend food, and not have any. That's what we want. And you listen to people. You can watch foreign movies, and then you see that everybody's the same. We all have the same problems and everything.
Same struggles.
Why can't we get along? And And that's what the bottom line is to me. We can all get along. We really can if we stop, believing
great.
this war mentality. And, the only way is to conquer other countries,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well
Well-
said.
Well, cool, Mike. Thanks for hanging out with us
Mhm.
tonight.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, I can
We-
tell this right in Beachman's wheelhouse. I think it's probably one of his favorite podcasts in quite a while.
Oh, thank you.
I just like talking about this stuff. I mean, I
Yeah,
know a
me
lot-
too. Me too.
In the last couple weeks, though, I've been a little out of the loop. I've been preoccupied with some other things, but yeah, I really do like keeping up with things. And there's a lot of stuff going on right now too. It's crazy.
Yeah, there sure is.
So-
And
It's
if you
so-
watch these podcasts, the couple
Mhm.
Duran and the other one, they'll send you other ones that are sort of
Okay.
related to it.
Yeah, you get
So
in
that's
the
what happens,
algorithm.
then they know what you want. Well, Google, okay, he likes this stuff.
But,
We'll
but
send
you
him.
got to be careful to get
You gotta
sucked
be
in
careful.
the whirlpool algorithm, and then you end up in your own little echo chamber. You got to
Mhm.
you got to
gotta
be
get
aware
out
of
there.
that. You really do.
Absolutely.
What do you think
And
is the biggest lie being propagated right now?
The biggest
Oh,
lie
geez.
being propagated
Yeah.
that, well, let me see. There's a lot of lies being propagated.
The moon landing.
Oh,
The
that
flat
one.
Earth,
All right.
around Earth.
Well, I'm thinking the one that's I think the biggest lie being propagated. Well, there's a couple that Russia, Iran, and China are all planning to go to war with us.
Mm.
They really want. They're all preparing, and I see that as that they're afraid of us. They're afraid that that they have to be prepared. But in reality, the basic thing is, I really think that they want to, with the new multipolar world that's coming out, the emerging multipolar world where countries can get along with each other. And I think that that's what countries want to do. They don't want to be, threatened anymore. They don't want to be bullied. They don't want to be forced to follow, the U.S. Thing of like, you have to do, if you don't do business with us, you're our enemy. And I think countries, including Mexico, Mexico wants to deal with everybody who for their own.
Yeah, that goes into a lot deeper topics though when you talk
Yeah,
about
okay.
stuff like that, because then you have to talk about the dollar being the world reserve currency, and that's how we can sanction a country and literally destroy their economy because they won't. If the dollar is embargoed against that country, they can just. But if the dollar ever doesn't becomes not the world reserve currency, then all that changes, because then we're not going to be able to just print out of existence the value of our money. So,
but countries are dealing in their own currency now.
yeah, but
different
oil's still trading in dollars, and
Yeah,
as long as that
yeah.
happens, we're going to hold the reins.
Okay, my great hope is this. My
Yeah.
great hope is that Trump is going to meet with Putin, and they're
Mhm.
going to have a great conversation with each other, and they'll say, look, we don't want wars. Okay, we don't want war either. Let's work together. We can work together. We can help each other. We have a lot to give each other. And then I think that could be the beginning. And maybe, it's an illusion what I'm thinking of.
Well, the wild card on that is Zelensky, and he's already got his backup plan, because as soon as Trump kicked him out of the Oval Office 2 weeks ago, he literally flew over to the European Union
Yeah, I
and
know.
kissed their ass, and then ended up getting commitment from Britain to send their pittance of an army.
There's 70,000 troops.
Britain literally pledged boots on the ground.
Yeah, I know these crazy people.
It's just insanity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And none, but the British population doesn't want anything to do with this.
Yeah, they don't. Why should they? But
That's because
Right.
of their parliamentary systems. They can't vote. It just doesn't work.
Yeah, it's weird.
When
It's
things
very
are messed
weird.
up. It takes forever to change things.
Yeah.
But hey, I love the conversation, and I'd love
Yeah,
to
me
keep this
too.
going. I can bitch about this stuff. Hours.
Okay.
Hey, thanks for your time tonight. It's a great
Well, thank you very
conversation.
much. It was a pleasure.
So if you just listen to this podcast and you appreciate the content and the work that we're doing, we would love your support. Look in the comment section of this episode. Subscribe, rate us, comment. This gets our podcast in front of other listeners. And if you noticed, we don't have advertisers. For the cost of a cup of coffee, you can help keep it this way. Become a supporter right now. We'd appreciate it. I'm Jim the Yogi.
Feeling.
I'm Rick the Beach
In the
Man.
meantime,
Peace.